Well, with non-essential international travel returning from this coming Monday, the 19th of July, if you're planning on heading away, stay tuned, because there seems to be a lot of people who aren't aware of what to expect when they arrive at the airport. The editor of the Air and Travel magazine, Eoghan Corry, is with us here on Lunchtime Live today. If you have any questions for Eoghan, if you're planning on travelling over the next couple of weeks, you can send them in to us here on 53106, or you can call us if you want to join Eoghan on air as well. It's 1890 453 106. Eoghan Corry, good afternoon.
Afternoon, Andrea.
Eoghan, we've had quite a few emails from people over the past couple of days who've already travelled, who've already, gone on their summer holidays ahead of the July 19th deadline. And just a few of them are making the point, and this is why we wanted to chat to you today, ahead of the lifting of the restrictions this Monday and the non-essential international travel resuming. Some listeners just making the point that, there was no issue going through the airport as long as you had all the documents in order, as long as you had all your forms correctly filled out. But they felt a lot of the information wasn't being explained to them very well. Are you hearing this?
A lot of confusion. I mean, immense confusion over what's required to travel. And there's it's the first time travelling for so many people. It's like our first flight again, Andre. We're all that child again. Will the plane actually, was my physics teacher right? And will the plane take off? There's going to be quite a few changes for anyone who hasn't travelled since the beginning of March without the requirement for the documentation. But I think a lot of the troubles and the complications have probably been overstated. What the digital COVID certificate has done has brought together an awful lot of scraps of paper, to use the old, what we would have imagined as scraps of paper in the old days, into one QR code. It's working pretty well. Right across Europe, because it's a couple of Fridays. It's July the 1st since they've had this introduced right across Europe. And I think Romania was a little bit slow in rolling it out, but everybody else seems to be doing it quite well.
So, for instance, for people who are travelling, we'll say this week now, whether it be the 19th or 20th or 21st of July, they're fully vaccinated, they've had their 2 shots or whatever it is, but they haven't yet received their digital cert. What do they need arriving at the airport?
They will need, what's officially you need is your digital cert with this QR code, this famous QR code. That's the most important part of it. What people have been what the airlines have been accepting and what other countries have been accepting is the certificate, the signed certificate showing that you've been through your full course of vaccination. It has the date, the batch number, and the type of vaccination. Is this the little HSE card you get after That's the HSE card. It's been working now. It's not legislated. The reality is we will need it. Everybody is within their rights to demand the QR code, because that's what's being legislated for. But we have very little indication, by the way, on the Irish side as to what other parts of the equation will change, including arrivals from UK and USA. But what we do know is anyone through a full course of vaccination who is in possession of that valuable QR code will be able to travel unrestricted. That means no tests and no quarantine.
Well, it's funny because I've a couple of texts in here already on 53106. Like, this listener, can I use my vaccination card if my digital cert isn't issued? Pat in Cork is wondering, can I travel with my proof of vaccination if I haven't received the travel cert? This listener, if your digital cert hasn't arrived but you have the HSE vaccinations card, am I okay to go to the Canaries? So there's a lot of people obviously have
a lot of people waiting. I would imagine that by the time people get to travel, large numbers are not travelling next week. They will have landed. The reality is, yes, people are travelling with the vaccination card. I didn't tell you that, though.
Okay, all right. What about these forms and documents that people are talking about?
The forms and documents are, once you have your digital COVID cert, that's the most important. Most countries will have a locator form. Ireland has a locator form for your return. They're not that complicated. They're available online, but sometimes people forget about them. Spain has one, Portugal has one. In a country like Germany, for instance, last week, because our rates are rising, it's one of the parallel stories to this, is our numbers are going the wrong direction. Sadly, our numbers are going the wrong direction. Germany would have put the Midlands and Midlands East on a list last week, where you now have to just fill in your name and your phone number. They don't tend to be more complicated than your name, your phone number, and what flight you're arriving on in some cases. But do have a look out for those locator forms. After that, not that much that's complicated unless you're in that middle bit. And that's the bit that's causing a huge amount of head scratching and concern. The people who are above the age for which a test is not required. That's generally 6 years of age for people coming into Ireland. But countries like Spain and Portugal, where 70% of our outbound leisure, they will be 12. But between the age you don't require a test and the vaccinated age, that's where all the problems are arising and will continue to arise in the coming week.
Okay. This listener says, please ask Eoghan, I'm travelling to London for a work meeting on the 28th of July. The meeting will be the 29th and 30th, and I'll return late on the Friday night. Will I need a negative PCR test, and where can I get it, here or in London?
On return, it's unlikely you'll still need a negative PCR test. The way, Andrea, this has worked out this week is the officials have been very clear-headed about it. Government policy will be that PCR tests will not be required for fully vaccinated people. This is very important, fully vaccinated people returning from England. The politicians, depending on their hue and what time of the day, they are not as decisive as that, but I would be very surprised if, first of all, the fully vaccinated people coming from Britain are not liberated from quarantine and the tests as of Monday, and also if the age is not raised to 12. But we don't have that officially, and that's part of the immense confusion that's out there. Should you require your test coming back on the 29th, PCR tests are available in pharmacists like Boots are doing them across England, and a lot of private operators. Really, really important. As it stands, and maybe it'll be gone on Monday, but as it stands, an antigen test is not acceptable arriving back into Ireland. It has to be PCR. And the NHS test is not recognised. We 30 people off one flight carted off to mandatory hotel quarantine because their NH test wasn't recognised by Irish immigration. So be very careful. It's a full PCR test. I don't know if this will still apply as of Monday, but we don't have, we've got the officials being clear-headed, this is going to be government policy, and the politicians being less so.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I have another text in here from a listener who says, my partner has been vaccinated 2 jabs in Northern Ireland. Will her NHS vaccination card be sufficient for travel on the 24th of July from Dublin? Yes,
the NHS vaccination card isn't part of the European system, but what the British government have done bilaterals with quite a few of the European countries, Spain, Greece, places like that. So it's treated like the EU vaccination card. There's another important difference with Northern Ireland. Ireland has issued paper certificates. A lot of people have got them as PDFs, they've arrived in the post. These are accepted as at the airport. You know, bring your paper, they'll scan the QR code. It's the same as being on your phone. Northern Ireland isn't issuing paper. The NHS is not issuing paper. It's sort of an accepting, this thing that people think that everybody has a smartphone and you won't need paper. Those people haven't met my Auntie May, Andrea. There are a lot of people who will be flummoxed by the fact you won't have a paper option coming from Northern Ireland. But to go back to your question, check out the bilateral agreements that Britain has signed. They're not in the European Union since January. It's complicated the issue enormously, but they have been signing bilateral agreements with countries so that the NHS is treated exactly the same as an EU one. And also, just in relation to Ireland travelling to Britain, no test required, hasn't been, and still that's the case.
Eoghan Corry, editor of Air and Travel magazine. Eoghan, thanks a million for joining us.
Always a pleasure, Andrea. Thank you so much.
There's lots more questions coming into us here on the News Talk text line. I suppose it's just evidence of the number of people that are obviously planning on going on holidays over the next couple of